Xylar Station. A pinprick of metal and ambition clinging precariously to the event horizon of Cygnus X1, a supermassive black hole belching radiation and distorted spacetime. It wasn't a vacation spot, let's just say that. The exterior was all harsh angles and utilitarian design, betraying its sole purpose: to study and hopefully harness the raw, untamed power of a singularity. Inside, the station echoed with the rhythmic pulses of filtration systems and the clipped, precise pronouncements of the Glar. Imagine, if you will, a race of highly evolved militaristic goldfish, utterly devoted to protocol, obsessed with efficiency, and perpetually unimpressed by anything that wasn't Glar. Their scaled bodies, encased in shimmering, water-filled exosuits, moved with a synchronized grace, each movement dictated by centuries of rigid tradition. Every corridor, every control panel, every algae-based nutrient paste dispenser operated under a complex web of regulations, so intricate they made quantum physics look like a child's connect the dots. And then there was Dr. Miles Corbin. Miles wasn't Glar. Miles was human. Specifically, Miles was the kind of human who looked like he'd just woken up, even if he'd been awake for hours. His lab coat was perpetually rumpled, his hair a defiant mess and his default expression one of mild amusement bordering on sarcasm. He shuffled through the station like a tourist who'd accidentally wandered into a very serious, very damp, military parade. "Corbin," buzzed Overseer Glargle, his voice a series of modulated clicks and whistles. "Your presence is required in Sector Gamma 9 for Mandatory Observance Protocol 72 Beta. Your tardiness is noted." Miles suppressed a yawn, scratching the back of his neck. Yeah, coming, Overseer. Just gotta recalibrate the flux capacitor," he mumbled, knowing full well the Glar wouldn't understand the reference or the fact that he was making it up entirely. Sector Gamma 9 was, predictably, another sterile, dimly lit lab filled with humming machinery and blinking lights. Various Glar technicians hovered around a massive device resembling a chrome-plated clamshell, all diligently consulting their data slates. This was the heart of the Singularity Project, the Glar's grand ambition to tap into the boundless energy of the black hole. The Glar believed in order, in precision, in following the established procedures to the letter. Miles, on the other hand, believed in coffee, duct tape, and the occasional spark of chaotic inspiration. He saw the Singularity Project not as a sacred scientific endeavor, but as, well, let's just say he had a different idea of what harnessing energy really meant. Overseer Glargle swam towards Miles, his expression unreadable behind his helmet. "Corbin, explain your unauthorized absence. Mandatory Observance Protocol 72 Beta is crucial for maintaining the temporal integrity of the space-time matrix." Miles blinked. "Temporal integrity? Right, sorry, Overseer. Lost track of time. Was busy, calibrating." "Calibrating what, Corbin?" Glargle's tone was sharp. Miles gestured vaguely at a tangle of wires and spare parts on a nearby workbench. "Stuff. Science stuff. Gotta keep the thingamajigging." Glargle's optical sensors narrowed. "Your terminology is imprecise, Corbin. This project demands utmost precision. The fate of the Glar civilization may depend on it." Miles grinned. "Relax, Overseer. I'm just adding a little human ingenuity to the mix. You'll thank me later." The Glar naturally remained unconvinced. The Singularity Project was the Glar's magnum opus, a colossal undertaking involving enough superconducting wire to stretch to Kepler 186f and back, powered by banks of crystalline energy converters humming with barely contained power. Their goal was simple, in theory: to create a stable energy bridge directly into the black hole's accretion disk, siphon off a tiny fraction of its unimaginable power, and solve the Glar's energy needs for millennia. The reality, of course, was far more complicated. The Glar approached the task with their typical fervor. Every variable was meticulously cataloged, every potential outcome exhaustively modeled, and every action governed by a regulation so specific it required its own flowchart. They saw the black hole not as a cosmic monster, but as a complex equation to be solved, a puzzle to be dissected with the cold precision of logic. Miles, on the other hand, saw something else entirely. He saw potential. Untapped, chaotic potential. He wandered through the lab, a whirlwind of disorganized curiosity, poking at consoles, sketching diagrams on napkins pilfered from the nutrient paste dispenser, and generally confounding the Glar with his utterly baffling approach to science. "Corbin," chirped Technician Glaric, his exosuit twitching with barely suppressed agitation. "Regulation 47 Gamma clearly states that all adjustments to the energy matrix must be documented in triplicate and submitted for review by the High Council of Calibration. Your current actions are unaccounted for." Miles glanced up from the panel he was currently dismantling with a pocket knife. "Yeah, about that. I, filed the triplicate form. Digitally. It's in the cloud." Glaric's optical sensor's word. "The cloud? This facility utilizes a closed network system for maximum security." "There is no cloud." Miles shrugged. "Well, there is now. I just, uploaded it to the interwebs." He grinned, enjoying the look of utter bewilderment on the Glar's face. "Don't worry about it. It's all perfectly safe." "Probably." The Glar, as you might imagine, were not comforted. They watched with growing unease as Miles continued his adjustments, adding seemingly random components, rerouting power conduits with alarming disregard for established protocols, and muttering to himself about flavor profiles and aging processes. His modifications, while seemingly minor, began to have unexpected side effects. The station's gravity fluctuated sporadically. The nutrient paste dispenser started dispensing flavors that were decidedly not algae-based. One unfortunate Glar reported a distinct taste of strawberry cheesecake, and the lights in Sector Gamma 9 developed a disconcerting habit of flickering in time to old Earth disco songs. The Glar, of course, attributed these anomalies to Miles's incompetence, his lack of respect for procedure, and his general disregard for the delicate balance of the Singularity Project. They began to suspect that he didn't quite grasp the gravity of the situation, the sheer importance of their endeavor. What they didn't realize was that Miles understood the project perfectly. In fact, he understood it far better than they did. He just had a different vision for its ultimate purpose. A vision that involved a lot less energy production and a lot more, well, let's just say it involved a very, very large glass. The first sign that something was truly amiss came with the temporal distortions. At first, it was subtle, a misplaced data entry, a tool inexplicably reappearing on the opposite side of the lab. Then it escalated. Glaric swore he'd experienced Tuesday twice in a row, while another technician reported glimpsing his younger self walking past the hydroponics bay. The Glar convened emergency councils, consulted ancient texts, and performed complex mathematical simulations, all in an attempt to understand these temporal anomalies. They explored every possible explanation, from solar flares to quantum entanglement, painstakingly documenting each hypothesis in triplicate, of course. Miles, meanwhile, seemed utterly unfazed. He'd simply stroll past the bewildered Glar whistling a jaunty tune and casually adjust a dial on a nearby console. "Just smoothing out the wrinkles," he'd say with a wink. "Time's a funny thing, you. No? Needs a little perspective." Another incident involved the station's primary communication array. Suddenly, instead of relaying scientific data, the array began broadcasting poetry. Vogon poetry, to be precise. The Glar, with their delicate auditory sensors, were not amused. The High Council of Calibration demanded an immediate investigation. Teams of technicians swarmed the communication array, analyzing every circuit, every transistor, every resonating chamber. They discovered nothing. The array was functioning perfectly according to all established parameters, except, of course, for the excruciating poetry. "Corbin!" barked Commander Glartak, his voice modulator crackling with barely suppressed fury. "Explain this sonic pollution." Miles, who was busy stirring something in a large beaker with a suspiciously bubbly consistency, looked up with a puzzled expression. "Sonic pollution? Oh, that, yeah, I might have tweaked the array a little. Needed to clear the pipes. Get rid of the space clog. It's for the best, really. Think of it as a cosmic enema. The Glar were reaching their limit. Not only were Miles's modifications disrupting the station's operations, but his explanations were utterly incomprehensible. They began to whisper amongst themselves, exchanging worried glances and hushed pronouncements. Was Corbin deliberately sabotaging the Singularity Project? Was he a spy from a rival species? Or perhaps even more disturbingly, was he simply insane? The thought was almost too horrifying to contemplate. After all, the Glar prided themselves on their impeccable logic, their unwavering adherence to reason. The idea that they might be sharing a space station with a madman was deeply unsettling. The incidents continued, each one more bizarre and inexplicable than the last. The station's artificial gravity would occasionally reverse, sending Glar floating helplessly around the corridors. The life support system began emitting a faint but persistent odor of freshly baked apple pie, and the security drones developed a disconcerting habit of breakdancing in the main observation lounge. The Glar were at a loss. They had followed every protocol, consulted every expert, and analyzed every variable. Yet they were completely unable to understand, let alone control, the chaos that Miles Corbin had unleashed upon their meticulously ordered world. Their unease festered into suspicion, and suspicion, in turn, blossomed into full-blown paranoia. They began to monitor Miles's every move, scrutinizing his actions, analyzing his motives. They were convinced that he was up to something dangerous, something that could jeopardize the entire Singularity Project. They just couldn't figure out what it was. All they knew was that they had to stop him. For the sake of the station, for the sake of their sanity, for the sake of the entire Glar civilization, they had to intervene. They had to save Miles Corbin, even if it meant saving him from himself. The decision was unanimous. Dr. Miles Corbin was a threat, a walking, talking, whistling anomaly that jeopardized the very fabric of their reality. They would stage an intervention, a rescue mission, if you will, to save him from the insidious influence of the black hole and from his own baffling behavior. Commander Galactic assembled a squad of his most trusted and heavily armed soldiers. The plan was meticulously crafted, of course, adhering to standard operating procedure 789 Omega. Apprehension and containment of unstable elements within confined environments. The squad, clad in their shimmering bioluminescent armor, marched towards Miles's lab, their synchronized footsteps echoing through the sterile corridors. Galactic, leading the charge, clutched his energy rifle, his mandibles twitching with a mixture of apprehension and grim determination. They reached the lab door, the air thick with the scent of ozone and something vaguely reminiscent of burnt sugar. Galactic signaled his squad to halt. He cleared his throat, activated the door communicator, and announced in his most authoritative voice, "Dr. Corbin, this is Commander Galactic of the Xylar Station Security Force. We are here to assist you." Inside, Miles barely glanced up from his work. He was surrounded by a chaotic array of wires, tubes, and beakers, all connected to the Singularity Project's main console. He was humming tunelessly to himself, seemingly oblivious to the imminent arrival of the Glar rescue squad. "Assist me?" Miles echoed, his voice laced with amusement. "With what exactly? I'm kind of in the middle of something here." Galactic, adhering strictly to protocol, repeated his statement, this time adding a veiled threat. "Dr. Corbin, your recent activities have raised concerns among the station's crew. We believe that you may be experiencing difficulties. We are here to offer our support." "Difficulties?" Miles chuckled. "Oh, you mean the temporal hiccups and the random Vogon poetry? Relax, guys, it's all part of the process. Think of it as artistic license." Galactic's patience, already stretched thin, snapped. "Dr. Corbin, open the door. This is not a request." Miles sighed dramatically. All right, keep your scales on. But don't say I didn't warn you." He pressed a button on the console, and the lab door hissed open, revealing the chaotic interior and the nonchalant human amidst it all. The Glar squad surged into the lab, energy rifles raised, their eyes scanning the room for any signs of danger. Miles, however, simply leaned back in his chair, a bemused expression on his face. "Well, this is a bit dramatic, isn't it?" he said, gesturing around the room with a wrench. "What's all the fuss about? Did I miss Casual Friday again?" "Dr. Corbin," Glar said, his voice barely controlled. "We are here to ensure your safety and the safety of this station. Your modifications to the Singularity Project are unauthorized and potentially hazardous." Miles raised an eyebrow. "Hazardous? Nah, just a little bit experimental. Besides," he added with a wink, "no risk, no reward, right?" "We are taking you into custody, Dr. Corbin, for your own good," Glar declared, signaling his squad to move forward. "Custody?" Miles scoffed. "Seriously? You guys are going to arrest me for science? That's a new one." He then mumbled under his breath, just loud enough for the Glar to hear. "I haven't been this popular since college." As the Glar soldiers advanced, Miles calmly reached for a brightly colored flask sitting on a nearby table. All right, he said, holding up the flask. "Before you haul me off to space jail, how about a little refreshment? It's a new batch. I call it Singularity Sunrise." The Glar soldiers hesitated, their programming momentarily overridden by a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Glar, however, remained steadfast. "Do not engage. It could be a trap." Miles shrugged. "Suit yourselves. More for me, then." He popped the top of the flask and took a long swig, a blissful expression spreading across his face. "Ah, that's the stuff. Smooth with just a hint of existential dread." That's when it hit them. Not the beam of a disruptor rifle, not a rogue wave of temporal energy, but the blindingly obvious truth. All this time, Miles hadn't been misusing the technology at all. He wasn't trying to weaponize the black hole, or open a portal to another dimension, or even communicate with the space squids of Kepler 186F. He had been repurposing it. His modifications, the strange contraptions, the unsanctioned materials, the temporal hiccups. They weren't the signs of a mad scientist teetering on the brink of cosmic disaster. They were the telltale marks of a distiller. A cosmic distiller, to be precise, but a distiller nonetheless. The Singularity Project, in Miles Corbin's undeniably capable and utterly irreverent hands, had been transformed into a celestial still, capable of producing the most potent, mind-bending alcohol the universe had ever seen. He'd been using the black hole not for energy, not for research, but as the ultimate fermentation catalyst. The Glar stared, their multifaceted eyes wide with a dawning horror and a sliver of something else. Was that admiration? No, surely. Not. Glar didn't admire humans. They cataloged them, analyzed them, and occasionally tolerated them. But the truth was undeniable. The complex equations on the whiteboards weren't about theoretical physics. They were about alcohol percentages and proofing methods. The strange humming noises weren't temporal distortions. They were the sounds of super-accelerated fermentation. And the burnt sugar smell? Well, that was just the caramelized wormholes, giving it that special smoky flavor. Miles, oblivious to the Glar's collective existential crisis, beamed at them. "So," he said, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Anyone else want a taste of liquid space-time? It's got a real kick." It all happened so fast. Zorgan, ever the dutiful officer, had seized one of the unlabeled vials from Miles's workstation, intending to run a full-spectrum analysis. He hadn't even considered the possibility that it wasn't a dangerous compound. Before anyone could stop him, before Miles could even offer a warning, though, knowing Miles, he probably wouldn't have, Zorgan had pulled the cork and taken a tentative sip. The effect was instantaneous. Zorgan's normally rigid posture wavered, his multifaceted eyes widened to an almost comical degree, and a strange gurgling sound escaped his gills. He swayed, then grabbed the nearest console for support, which, unfortunately, happened to be the main control panel for the station's gravity regulators. Chaos erupted. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending Glar warriors tumbling across the room like kelp in a turbulent current. Consoles sparked, alarms blared, and the low hum of the Singularity Project stuttered ominously. It wasn't a strategic retreat. It was a galactic bar brawl waiting to happen. The Singularity spirits hit the Glar like a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated glee. Their militaristic discipline, honed over centuries of rigorous training, crumbled faster than a sandcastle in a supernova. One Glar, normally a stoic weapons specialist, began juggling plasma grenades, shrieking with laughter as they bounced harmlessly off his armored carapace. Another, a renowned strategist, started drawing elaborate battle plans on the walls with a fluorescent marker, occasionally stopping to lick the marker tip with a blissful expression. Vogon himself, the unfortunate patient zero of this interstellar intoxication, was attempting to lead a conga line through the station's narrow corridors, his booming voice echoing off the metal walls. The effect wasn't limited to the warriors. Even the science officers, normally paragons of logic and reason, were affected. One was convinced he could communicate with the station's ventilation system, engaging in a deep and meaningful conversation with a series of hisses and clicks. Another was attempting to teach a cleaning bot how to moonwalk. Miles, watching the unfolding pandemonium with a mixture of amusement and concern, sighed. Well, he muttered to himself, at least they're having fun. Though he also made a mental note to add a prominent warning label to his next batch. May cause excessive conga lining and inappropriate conversations with inanimate objects. The Glar, liberated from the shackles of their rigid protocols, embraced the chaos with an enthusiasm that was both terrifying and strangely endearing. Their world, once defined by order and discipline, was now a swirling vortex of laughter, bad dance moves, and questionable decision-making. The black hole, usually a source of scientific curiosity, now felt like the backdrop for the strangest party in the galaxy. The hangover that followed was, to put it mildly, epic. The Glar awoke to find their station in disarray, their dignity in tatters, and a profound sense of confusion clouding their usually sharp minds. Plasma grenades were scattered about, battle plans adorned the walls in garish colors, and the cleaning bot was still attempting a rather pathetic moonwalk in the corner. Vogon, nursing a throbbing headache, convened an emergency council. The question before them was not whether Miles Corbin had violated protocol, but what to do about the Singularity spirits. To simply ignore it was unthinkable. To destroy, it would be an insult to the very principle of scientific inquiry, however unorthodox the method. After days of intense deliberation, a solution was reached. In true Glar fashion, it was a solution steeped in regulation, procedure, and an almost comical level of bureaucratic oversight. The Singularity spirits, now officially designated Recreational Compound 734 Omega, would be incorporated into Glar culture, but naturally with very strict guidelines. Consumption was limited to designated relaxation zones clearly, marked with hazard stripes and equipped with mandatory gravity stabilization nets. Each Glar was allotted a precise, pre-measured dose based on their carapace density and gill capacity. A complex series of forms, in triplicate of course, had to be filled out before and after each serving, detailing the consumer's emotional state, coordination level, and any observed deviations from standard Glar behavior. And most importantly, under no circumstances was designated recreational compound 734 Omega to be consumed within 5 kilometers of any vital station systems, weapon, emplacements, or, heaven forbid, the Singularity Project itself. Miles, upon hearing the Glar's decision, couldn't help but chuckle. He'd inadvertently created a cultural phenomenon, albeit one drowning in red tape. "So you're saying I've legalized fun," he said to Vogon, who was overseeing the installation of a breathalyzer outside the relaxation zone. "But only if everyone fills out the paperwork first?" Vogon, ever the pragmatist, simply nodded. "Efficiency and enjoyment are not mutually exclusive, Dr. Corbin. We simply believe in maximizing both through structured implementation." The Glar's attempt to assimilate Miles's creation into their culture was a fascinating if somewhat absurd spectacle. The relaxation zones, with their safety nets and mandatory mood assessment surveys, became a bizarre blend of hedonism and hyper-regulation. Glar warriors, fresh from rigorous training exercises, would dutifully fill out their forms, sip their allotted portion of Singularity spirit, and then proceed to engage in carefully monitored, government-approved relaxation activities, such as synchronized swimming to polka music. It was a cultural exchange unlike any other, a testament to the universe's capacity for both profound misunderstanding and unexpected connection. And Miles Corbin, the accidental bartender of the black hole, had somehow managed to bring a little bit of chaos and a whole lot of paperwork to the meticulously ordered world of the Glar. Years later, Xylar Station wasn't just a research facility anymore. It was a destination, a shimmering beacon in the inky void, drawing in all manner of strange and thirsty travelers. Word had spread across galaxies about the potent potables brewed in the shadow of the Singularity. The Glar, ever meticulous, had expanded their relaxation zones, adding karaoke booths, with songs translated into guttural Glar war chants, and gravity-defying dance floors. The paperwork, of course, had increased exponentially, now requiring holographic projections and biometric scans. Miles, now sporting a comfortable lab coat and a perpetually amused grin, was a local legend. He oversaw the operation, tweaking his recipes, experimenting with exotic fruits from newly discovered planets, and occasionally dodging the overly enthusiastic advances of inebriated alien dignitaries. "Another round for the table, eh, Miles?" A booming voice echoed across the bustling bar. It was Crag, a hulking Krobnar warrior with 3 eyes and a penchant for Singularity spirit-infused smoothies. "Make it a double. Tell him it's on me." Crag the Conqueror always pays his debts in his bar tabs. Miles chuckled, wiping down the counter with a rag. "Coming right up, Crag. Just try not to conquer any planets tonight, all right? The Glar get touchy about that sort of thing near the plasma conduits." He mixed the drink with practiced ease. The station buzzed with the cacophony of 1,000 alien tongues, the clinking of glasses, and the rhythmic thump of intergalactic techno-polka. The Glar, still adhering to their strict schedules, could be seen participating in mandatory conga lines, their rigid carapaces surprisingly flexible after a few sips of Singularity spirit. As Miles handed Crag his drink, he couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. He'd come to Xylar Station to study black holes, not to become a cosmic mixologist. But sometimes, he thought, the greatest discoveries are the ones you stumble upon while trying to do something else entirely. And as he watched a group of giggling grungleberries attempt to navigate the gravity-defying dance floor, he raised his own glass in a silent toast. To unexpected consequences, to the blurring of cultural lines, and to the infinite possibilities that lie just beyond the event horizon, or at the bottom of a really, really strong drink.